If you've been with me for a while, you know that this podcast is all about helping you with your spiritual growth. And as we've talked about some of the tools that can help with this growth, I've also occasionally mentioned something along the lines of, you may be going through an ascension. Well, I've been getting some questions recently about what is ascension. Is it the same as spiritual awakening? Does it have anything to do with the dark night of the soul? Or you've also asked me, am I just flat out losing my mind? Well, today we're talking about ascension plus the undeniable stages of the awakening you may be going through. Oh, it's very real. This podcast is all about helping you with your spiritual growth so you can overcome obstacles and manifest your destiny to crystallize all things good, basically to have success on life's journey. It's all about getting unstuck by unlocking your hidden power. So let's get started. Hi there and welcome. My name is Remy, like Do Re Mi. I'm a best-selling author and creator of the Get Unstuck Revolution. I help extraordinary women just like you dissolve the obstacles in your path so you can bring success to you. Now let's get started with today's video. In a nutshell, when we talk about ascension, we're talking about the awakening of our soul into a higher level of consciousness. This is the stuff that changes us way down at the DNA level, so it feels deep. It can feel like the dark night of the soul, but at the same time, it also involves a very high vibration or frequency, what some people say feels like they're walking on the sun, bright and intense. So you can imagine the body and the mind's confusion. And if you've ever wondered if you're on the brink of insanity, today's episode, well, it may bring some clarity about your spiritual success. If you'd like to see success and full abundance along life's journey, and if you're wanting to tap into a greater knowingness and align with the higher consciousness of your infinite self, instead of the lower ego thinking and negative thoughts that push success away, then this is for you. It's time to be unabashedly, unapologetically, happily untethered to ego thinking. It's time to align with the higher energies of our soul's path instead. Today's episode is for you if you wonder, what is spiritual ascension? Is there a difference between spiritual awakening and spiritual ascension? And if I'm going through a dark night of the soul, does this mean I'm in a spiritual ascension? Yes, these episodes are about how to find your hidden power when you want to transform these challenges into successes. I like to call it the audacity of alchemy, because when we're feeling stuck, well, it's never the situation that has us stuck, it's our energy about it that's become stuck in anxiety, overwhelm, doubts, worries, frustrations, indecision, and even anger. And often this is because of a spiritual injury that we've experienced, some kind of hidden trauma. So it isn't the pain of our situation, it's the pain of not being connected into the natural energy of who we really are, of being connected to that magical part of us that's a creative vibrational being who can use positive energies to create what we want and bring it into physical manifestation. We can allow our manifestations to materialize and not get stuck in the negative vibrations that block them. These positive energies that we talk about so much are where we find the magic of alchemy, because our choice of frequency, our choice of those positive thoughts and emotions can change the course of our journey. All right, so let's start with a quick definition of spiritual ascension, and I'll put this on the screen for you. Ascension is the merging into the divine source of pure energy. Ascension is the merging into the divine source of pure energy. We're talking about the awakening of our soul into a higher level of consciousness. And this is often brought about by a spiritual injury or trauma, or maybe by a life threatening illness. It may come on the heels of a dark night of the soul where we felt depressed or disconnected. And one of the fastest tracks to ascension is the twin flame journey. So, for those of you listening who are a twin flame, you know exactly what this process is. Our twin comes into our life, awakens us, and then runs for their lives because the emotions are too intense for them. The light is too intense. The love is too intense. They're beginning to awaken to a divine love, and this is perhaps the first time they're feeling it within our connection, and it scares the bejesus out of them, and they run for the hills, trying their best to hide from it, ignore it, deny it, which of course never works. In the meantime, we are left on this journey to ascension before coming into union with our twin years later after we've both done the required cleansing, purifying, and repatterning of the toxic patterns in order to prepare us for spiritual union back to the one soul. The one soul, capital O for one, capital S for soul, the one soul. We're patterning the one soul within this twin flame journey. So, different people choose different paths to ascension, and some of us choose the path of the twin flame journey because it's a fast track. May I just say, this is one time where being an overachiever has made me question my choices. Okay, so depending on which path of ascension we're on, whether it's a twin flame journey or something else, some call this journey of absolute torture and torment, and others call this journey a beautiful journey. And of course, this may depend on whether we're in the thick of ascension or whether we've come out on the other side. No matter what, our path is to merge into the divine source of pure energy. All right. There's some experts who say that we chose our path to ascension before coming into this life. And there are some who go on to say that as we wrap up our final lifetime on this planet through this ascension, we'll return to the dimension of our origin. But we aren't talking about all those details today. We're simply going over the basics of ascension so you can determine for yourself whether this might be the path you're on and just didn't know what to call it. So, ascension is the process by which we merge into the divine source of pure energy. But what does that mean? Okay. Well, it's the awakening of our soul into a higher level of consciousness, or maybe we could say our soul is awakening us to a higher level of consciousness. Either way, we begin to touch a vibrational frequency of pure positive energy and light. It releases our very natural, but maybe hidden power and wisdom. It releases our very natural power and wisdom. It merges us into a multidimensional world that can be, well, quite frankly, baffling. Life changes on every level. We begin to experience an inner rebirth. We feel an expansion of our mind and our spirit. We begin to repattern our thought patterns, and our physical body goes through changes as well. We learn that our negative beliefs, our negative mindset, and our negative feelings no longer serve any purpose. We begin to understand ourselves as spiritual beings in a way that we've never experienced before. Life no longer lets us slide by, and this is by design. Our priorities get rearranged. We no longer have the same urges or desires to accumulate earthly pleasures. And by that, I mean that the goals of our ego mind are no longer reasonable to us. We may feel a flood of spiritual goals rather than worldly goals, because what's happening with ascension is that our soul is freeing itself from earthly pettiness as we begin to realize what true love and true joy really are. All right. If you've ever been in a place where you've wondered, why are we here? What's my life's purpose? What we're feeling is an inspiration toward this awakening. We realize that there are powers here greater than we've imagined, both a power within us as well as a power around us that is supporting our growth. We develop a strength that we didn't know we had emotionally and spiritually, where we no longer allow things to affect us because we're seeing a bigger picture of why we're here and what we're intended to learn and how we're intended to grow. We begin to recognize our willingness to define our destiny and design it from a soul level. And this means we're no longer willing to settle for the mundane and the everyday. We're shifting our faith from the now physical reality to the unseen reality. We're realizing that this unseen reality is the only true reality. We're realizing that the unseen reality is the only true reality. Okay. As we begin to go through all these changes, we'll feel other things as well, because remember, we're being changed at the DNA level. You can do an internet search for symptoms of ascension. And in doing so, you'll get a pretty complete list of all kinds of things like body aches, purging, itching, tremors, needing a lot of sleep because the spiritual downloads and psychic activity are on high alert. We may also feel an increase in inner dialogue. We may feel stabbing pains in our spine or what feels like gas bubbles moving up through our spine. Ugh, I've had that. These are symptoms of what's called our energy pipeline. Or if you can imagine one of those images we see of a person sitting cross legged on the floor with each of their chakras glowing a different color along the spine, that might give you a visual. I think of it as the spine being our energy pipeline, and energy moves along that pipeline through each of the chakras as each chakra is open and expanded to handle a higher frequency of energy. So here we are. Our physical bodies are dropping density and we are burning off fears, negative thought forms, past life trauma, and that sort of thing. And as we re experience these past lives, let me say this again, as we re experience these past lives, we may feel intense emotions from panic to out and out rage to debilitating fears all over again. These past life memories are stored at the cellular level, and whatever hasn't been dealt with all needs to be purged. If this is our last life on this planet, there may be a lot of karma to repair. But our energy bodies are being prepared for an upgrade into a higher light frequency. We can't take any of this sludge with us to these higher levels. We need to be lighter and brighter, not buried down with past life trauma. And that's why we sometimes re experience these past life memories that seem to come out of nowhere so that we can deal with them. Now, of course, you can do a search for ascension symptoms and see what you find, see what you resonate with, because if you've ever felt like you must be losing your mind, you'll immediately feel like, oh, this is what's happening to me. Holy cannoli. Okay, so all this prepares us for the next stage of ascension where the changes become more rapid. We may have felt stagnant energy or felt like we're stuck, but we can't explain it. Or we may even have felt blockages, rips, tears, and course corrections. This is because now that we've become more awakened, our spiritual path is now being adjusted a little bit more, healed a little bit more, and repaired at a faster pace. We're developing new layouts and new blueprints, new templates. This is all part of the awakening process, and it helps us with those positive energy flows that we talk about every week here. And it also gets us ready for a deeper spiritual connection and enhanced insights and wisdom. Now, there are other ascension stages that come after this, but I'll save that for another episode. Who knows, maybe I'll do that next week. We want to, for today, just stick with the basics because I get a lot of questions about what's happening to me. I feel like I'm losing my mind. And common answers are maybe midlife crisis, empty nest syndrome. I mean, just so many things. I even had someone on a webinar who thought it was an extension of her TMJ. So if you've ever wondered what's wrong with me, well, this may feel like it resonates or at least gives you a new avenue to research. Well, then that's a good thing. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not trying to offer medical advice, not at all, just giving some options for other possibilities. If it resonates for you, soak it in. And if not, that's okay too. I had somebody on a group call tell me one time, this is ridiculous. There's no such thing. And another caller piped right up and said, well, obviously it's because you aren't going through it because it's very real. So, all these emotional and physical symptoms are preparing us for a new level of wisdom and a deeper spiritual connection. Now, I'll give you a couple of examples and maybe you can relate. For me, when my ascension began a few years back, it began with a psychic storm. I suddenly felt flocks of angels around me, literally hundreds. And then I started feeling other people's guides. And the downloads that I began receiving were like a fire hose. But there was physical turmoil that also revved up into high gear. I went through a period of tremors that were so bad I couldn't even hold a cup of coffee. I could barely get up my stairs. I had a photo shoot I remember scheduled for one morning and wondered if I should go to the ER instead because I was shaking and had these tremors were so uncontrollable. But they did eventually pass and all was back to normal. And then there was another time where I went to urgent care sobbing in tears, sobbing for literally hours because I had a stabbing pain in my back that just wouldn't go away. And I thought I must be having some kind of heart attack. And they ran test after test and couldn't find anything. Now, I knew, or at least I had a feeling that it was energetic, but I got to tell you, the pain was so intense. All I could do was cry uncontrollably. And the doctor told me, if you're in this much pain, it has to be a kidney stone. It can't be anything else because all the tests just came back negative. She really had no clue, could not find a thing wrong with me. And it did pass, no pun intended, and all went back to normal again. There was not a kidney stone in sight. It was indeed energetic. And then there was a period of time that I've mentioned before where my skin was itching so badly, but there was nothing there. No spots, no redness, no rash, but I mean, the itching was keeping me awake at night. During the day, I'd catch myself scratching while I was on the phone until I'd realized that I had blood under my fingernails. So I went to the doctor again because it was just getting so much worse. Nothing over the counter would help. Again, I knew it was energetic, but it was killing me. The itching was making my skin crawl, and I literally wanted to just scrape my skin off. It was bad. They gave me some standard protocol for allergy relief, and it worked, but they probably thought I was on drug withdrawal or something. I don't know. It took a few weeks, but it passed too. And like the other systems or other symptoms, excuse me, everything eventually went back to normal. Sorry, I'm itching as I think about it. Okay, maybe you've heard or read about some similar stories. Just remember that ascension is merging into the divine source of pure energy. So there's a lot that will burn off that we just can't take with us into these higher levels of awareness. We may feel like we're going to stroke out at times. Believe me, I've been there. But it also helps to know what it is we're going through and to just write it out if we can. We can also ask our angels to ease up a little when it gets to be too much to handle. There is light at the end of the tunnel, literally, and it is a beautiful divine light. So, once we realize our true self, these symptoms will disappear. You've heard me talk about our ego self versus our soul self, and this is the battle that needs to be won. And once it is, once we overcome this ego thinking and we've moved into a higher frequency of thought, we know that we've burned off all these things that needed to burn off so that we could enter into that pure light and love energy. All right. So the next logical question is there a difference between spiritual awakening and ascension? Well, both ascension and awakening are part of our spiritual growth, but there is a slight difference between the two. When we think of self discovery, like those self discovery questions and personality questionnaires, this is part of our awakening. It comes first. We're in the initial realization that we've been mostly dealing with our negative ego self. We become aware of this. And we become aware of the idea and we realize that we have a deeper level or a soul self that's more connected with spirit and less connected with things on the material earthly plane. So, awakening is that initial realization of our ego self as we've worked through our own self discovery. All right. So, by contrast, when we think of self mastery, not just self discovery, when we think of self mastery, now we're in the realm of ascension. We've moved beyond our initial realization of our soul self or our spiritual self. We've moved beyond the recognition, and now we're moving out of orientation and into the PhD level of mastery. The concept of unlimited potential is no longer a concept. It's something that we know and understand and we feel, and we want to apply it. We want to ascend to higher levels of awareness and higher thoughts and vibrations. Our perceptions now begin to align with universal love and light, and our negative ego thinking, well, it becomes useless to us. And we're now able to stay in these upper levels of consciousness, these upper frequencies for longer periods of time, not just during meditation. In other words, we feel entirely connected rather than using meditation time in order to connect. We're able to feel a much deeper level of emotional well being where this 3D world no longer has an effect on us. We're in a much better place to disallow anyone or anything to affect us emotionally, psychologically, or spiritually. So, our soul has been seeking spiritual freedom. And so, this is part of our awakening and then our ascension. Spiritual freedom or freedom from our negative ego thinking is at the bottom of all this. And it's been part of our journey as we learn new ways to grow and evolve. As we empower ourselves towards self expression and who we are at our core without those negative thoughts and emotions that can drain us, we're choosing a higher frequency, higher and better thoughts, a higher awareness, because our choice of frequency, our choice of more positive emotions changes the course of our journey, especially if we're on a journey of ascension. So, reflecting back on everything we covered today, how can you apply what you've learned? I've been getting some questions recently about what is ascension, and maybe this has been your question. Does it make sense now, especially if you've been wondering lately whether you're stumbling through life's obstacles like everybody else, or whether you're actually losing your mind, or what actually is happening? All right. Well, I hope this helps you as you're using the powers of alchemy to transform challenges and obstacles into positive new successes. This podcast is all about helping you have success on your spiritual growth journey. It's all about getting unstuck by unlocking your hidden power. If you still can't get your head around what's got you stuck in life or in business, you can tell me about it. You can send me a question to questions at unlockyourhiddenpower.com. Or you may not know that you can get a free copy of my latest book at unlockyourhiddenpower.com. You'll discover the 22 undeniable laws of alchemy and how to take a wrecking ball to doubts, worries, frustration, and indecision so that challenges evaporate before your eyes and you can move along. You can get your instant download at unlockyourhiddenpower.com. Well, thanks for joining me today, and I'm wishing you a life filled with all the alchemy you need to bring success to you. Feel free to share this video with anyone you know who's feeling stuck, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.